New Bold Targets is now Throom. I use Throom targets on the range for all the benefits of steel with none of the drawbacks. They're made in the USA too. Pick up a set to make your shooting more fun and effective.
So I do want to talk as well about human cognition and bias. We have to talk about human psychology here a little bit. I've been talking for almost an hour, I get it. This has been a huge area of study for me. If you want to study some of this stuff, here's a couple of books that you can really look at. There's a great psychology book called Influence. And it's this entire book about how you get marketed to and how companies influence your buying decisions. And you know what they talk about? They say, okay, wait a minute. This is why, for instance, there is, for instance, the law of reciprocity. I gave you something, so that obligates you to give me something. Which is why, for instance, you'll get the American Legion sending you the envelope labels. So look, I sent you a thing, so you have to send me some money back. That's the law of reciprocity. Or somebody says, hey, I did this thing. You ever have somebody come up to you at the gas station and clean your windshield? Hey, just let me, not an employee, but somebody that's like, hey, I'm trying to make a buck or whatever, so they just come up and clean your windshield. But I did something for you, you're obligated to do something for me. That's human psychology, okay? And the brain is a predictive organ. And it actually filters out most information that you see. What you think you're seeing, often you're actually not seeing. Your brain is filling in data for you. And what happens is that your brain predicts what's there and what's not. And so we all have cognitive biases, which filter out that which conflicts with our expected reality and confirms that which confirms our pre-existing conditions and our pre-existing understanding. I will be quite frank with you and tell you how that comes out on my YouTube channels. I don't even have to tell you. What are some of the cognitive biases that come out all the time? Soleil, who moderates comments on YouTube all the time. Well, of course, John, you're a Republican like me, and I go, really? That's interesting. For the record, I'm a registered independent. Okay? Everybody has to earn my vote every time. I'll tell you another one. Ready? Of course they're black. See it on my YouTube channel all the time. And I go, okay, you're looking at the wrong things. Look more. You're looking at the wrong things. Your cognitive bias is showing up and seeing what's going on here. I know I don't expect you to have watched today's video, but there's nothing on the channel today about, of course, he's white. But today, some dummy who has a long history of violence walked up to a guy at 4 o'clock in the morning who was just trying to get into his store to start his morning routine and knocked him out cold. Just walks up to him, hey man, bang, and punches him right in the face. Like, wait, what? But of course, there's none of that there because it doesn't meet the conforming bias. So we all have that. And this is what we have to do. We have to retrain ourselves to advance from physical characteristics like race or even gender, or environmental characteristics like what neighborhood we're in, to behavioral characteristics, such as expression, gaze, hands, body language, words. You heard Chuck earlier talking about pre-assault cues. What are some of those pre-assault cues? Chuck, is being black a pre-assault cue? No, right? But you'll hear people, that's their cognitive bias. So again, we got some significant issues, right? These cognitive biases are real, so they're a significant issue. So behavioral cues is what we're looking for. How do we stop active killers? We find behavioral cues and we look for those behavioral cues. So we have to advance our understanding to know what those behavioral cues are that we're looking for rather than the cognitive biases and putting those together. I'll tell you another one. Had an officer-involved incident on the channel not long ago. Cops get called. My hometown. Outside of a restaurant I have been in many times. This one is literally 2.5 miles from the house that I lived in for 17 and a half years. Cops get called to a shooting call. Somebody shot a gun. Phoenix PD, generally, excellent police department, roll in to see what's going on, and the person that they are interviewing happens to be a female. So they're talking with her, whatever. Her boyfriend is over here. Now their boyfriend, they're like, this is my problem. The girl is my problem. I know that's my problem. And so the boyfriend, they're like, hey man, I need you to back off and get away so we can talk to her. All 3 officers are on her. But I will give you, and I guarantee you, this is the one that we know we have instance here of of somebody that we said has had a gun. And they ask her, do you have a gun on you? And she goes, nope. She goes, nope, sure don't. Now she's wearing basically a spandex top and a pair of spandex shorts, and she's got like a bandana hanging out of her waist here and folded over her waist. And you're like, nope. And then they go through her purse and they find drugs in her purse. They find out she's got a warrant. So they start looking through her purse. They find drugs in her purse, and they find ammo in her purse. And then they go, okay, so we're going to end up having to hook her up a little bit. And they just take their time nice and easy. Well, guess what? Where the bandana is, she decides to draw a gun and have a gunfight with him. But in my opinion, because she was a woman, they were going, nope, this is nonviolence here. We're not have to worry about violence here. Rather than going, this is my suspect, and I need to pat her down immediately for officer safety. So do those cognitive biases work against us too? Yeah, big time, right? So again, retrain ourselves to look for behavioral cues. And when it's time to use my verbal skills versus when it's time to use my physical skills. Chuck showed you one earlier where he was talking about this guy comes up, goes, yo man, can I have $1? Now that doesn't necessarily mean that they are absolutely going to attack, but does it give me an indication? That is a behavioral cue that things are there. I'll give you another one. A lot of times what we see all the time. Now, Chuck's one is actually, the use of force that he was in is actually against some of what we see on the regular basis, because usually as long as a guy is yipping and yelling at you, he's okay. He's probably not going to attack you. It's usually about when he gets quiet that bad things are coming. So the way that we normally put that is not the barking dog you got to worry about. It's a behavioral cue. It's when he gets quiet. Or we see this all the time. What, you got a problem? Now, what about this makes this a threatening stance? Chin is forward, hands are clasped, and down at my sides, but my hands are out away from me, so I'm making myself look bigger and more aggressive. What, you want to go? So again, that's a behavior cue. We got to look at that behavior cue and how we can see those as pictures of escalation and then therefore de-escalate them. I want to give you a couple of models on this and some things to do for some continuing education for you, all right? So I worked through this one and I'm like, man, here's the reality of things. I could do some basically force-on-force verbal judo with you and give you scenarios and go, okay, you're going to be X person and then you're going to be Y person and then you're going to work through some of this stuff. But the reality is, that's like the driver training when you're on the track and the cones are all great and all that stuff, but how did you learn how to drive? You've got to get out in traffic, right? How do you learn verbal judo and verbal de-escalation skills? In the real world with real people in real scenarios. Now, I would strongly suggest you don't try to learn those with people who might want to whoop you. But rather, I would strongly suggest you learn those just with the people that are in your world and practice the skills in non-threatening environments so that when they show up, you know how to use them. I will say this, when the stress level goes up, I don't have this on a slide, but when the stress level goes up, calm is a superpower. If people around you are losing their minds and you can stay calm and in the moment, you are vastly ahead of everyone else. That's also true for your gunfight. If you have to get the gun out, the person who's panicking is not winning. Almost always. When you start taking empty-handed skills, when I started jiu-jitsu about a year and a half ago now, we had to take 6 months off because of the Rona. The first 6 months, one of the things that happens all the time with all jiu-jitsu white belts is you freak out for 6 months because you get somebody who has a little bit of weight, even if they don't have weight, they know how to use pressure, and the next thing you know, you're on the bottom and you can't breathe, and you go, ah, and you start freaking out. They call that a white belt spaz. And you go, ah, and you break things. And it's the hardest thing in the world because you're a white belt and they're like going, oh no, don't hurt you or me, stop, whack. I actually, in Thailand, I broke the tooth out of a black belt's mouth because of a white belt spaz. The coach, the coach at my friend's school, I busted a tooth out of his head. Awesome, it's a great way to get invited back, by the way. Okay, so calm is a superpower. If I can stay calm, then I'm in the thinking mode of my brain and not the reacting mode of my brain, and therefore I am in charge of myself and can be proactively ahead of everyone else and what's around me. You've seen this as well in traffic situations. If you get in an emergency situation with a vehicle, somebody pulls up stopped in front of you, somebody runs a red light. If you go, oh, then what happens? Do you make good decisions or bad decisions when you're startled? Bad decisions. But some guy stops up short in front of you, and you can go, nuts. Look fast, move fast, get in the next lane where you've got a space because you stayed calm. You have a much greater possibility of getting out of that without a problem. Calm is a superpower.